At about 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to roll this back and show it to you. There you go. So now they're going to start pulling these ballots out from under this table. This table, the black one, was placed there by the lady with the blonde braids at about 8:22 a.m. in the morning. So she put that table there. So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the pretense that we're going to stop counting, is the person who put the table there at 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table. Yeah, upper right hand, you see the gentleman in the red. So he just pulled one out. So what are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses? Is the question. So these machines can process about 3,000 ballots an hour. You have multiple machines there, and they're there for 2 hours. So you do the math. How many ballots went through those machines in those 2 hours when there was no one there to supervise, to be present, consistent with your statutes and rules, to supervise the tabulation? We believe that could easily be, and probably is certainly, beyond the margin of victory in this race.
Well, that's quite an interesting piece of news, isn't it? So, going back to a video I made not too long ago, you'll actually find where I put together some clips showing some fishy stuff going on with the election ballot count at the time, right? I put all that together and showed, where people were counting in rooms separate, looked like a lady was filling out ballots. Multiple people have tried to come forward and give their own explanation for what's going on, or just say it's discredited, that it's doctored footage, one person said. I haven't seen evidence that footage that I put together, other than the fact that I edited it the way that I did, just to put multiple clips together, was doctored. If they doctored that lady filling out ballots, they did some magnificent work, okay? So, once again, I don't want people to get confused here. I'm not arguing that Donald Trump should be the president right now. Definitely from the looks of that, based on the facts that they've laid out, from what took place in Georgia, it's highly likely Georgia could have been stolen from Trump. And arguably, if there was one state that probably was the most surprising that went to Joe Biden, it would be Georgia. Okay, now I know the response is, oh, well, Atlanta, and they've got a growing Democrat base and this and that. Look, it's the South, okay? We're red, and we're known as being red for a reason, okay? Pennsylvania, him losing Pennsylvania, not surprising. Was he cheated out of it? Don't know. Michigan, Wisconsin, him losing, was he cheated out of it? Don't know. Would I be surprised if he was not cheated actually out of those states? Does that mean there was absolutely no fraud whatsoever took place there? Not necessarily. But without the fraud, could he still have lost? Possibly. Okay? My thing was, and this was what I said all along, was I felt like that the people, if there was this conspiracy behind the scenes to make sure that Trump lost, everyone that's now rushing to red mirage, man. Everybody voted for Democrats by mail. So here was my entire response to that, okay? Granted, more people voted this time than for any other president. The argument is, well, they didn't want Trump, so they went out and voted for someone that they may not have liked as much just because they didn't want Trump. Possibly that's the case. I mean, I can see a valid argument there, but I also have a hard time believing that they would have found that Joe Biden was the man that should replace Donald Trump. Sure, some people probably felt that way. I don't know that this many millions of people felt that way. Okay, I just have a really hard time believing that. Does that mean that I'm right? No. Does that mean that I'm wrong? No. It's just a hunch. It's just a suspicion on my end. But as far as Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania are concerned, those were typically blue states anyway. So rigging or no rigging, it's honestly surprising Trump won them the last time around, right? And I was cautioning people like my mother-in-law, hey, be careful. So those states are to me a toss-up. Was he screwed? Was he not screwed? I don't know. I don't think he ran as good of a campaign this time around. I feel like what he ran a campaign on in 2016 had a much bigger impact on people in those states than the campaign he ran this time. What he ran a campaign on more or less last time was jobs, 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 and fixing our country. Those people in those states, especially Michigan and Pennsylvania, can really relate to that. Why? Michigan auto industry. Crushed. Who's been in control for a lot of it? The Democrats, okay? The Democrats ran a lot of Michigan into the ground. A lot of those people feel that aftermath. And he had a better message on jobs and trade than Hillary Clinton. And he was vocal about that message. I feel like that's why he won. Pennsylvania, the steel industry, for example. Okay? So, being as how he focused a campaign this time around on a lot of culture war issues and law and order and not so much of the jobs, and arguably has done some things but didn't deliver nearly the way he said he would deliver on the jobs. I'm sure there's a lot of right-wingers, if they watch this video, who are going to, get a fire under their butt because I said that, because they think he's done absolutely everything known to man for jobs. He has not, but we could debate that if you'd want. Okay? But to me, it's understandable why he may have lost those. But at the same time, people in that state could say, okay, he hasn't done what he said he was going to do. He didn't talk about what we would like to have heard this time around. But we know what Joe Biden has done for 20, 30, 40 years. Maybe he ain't the way to go either. So, again, I could see it going either way. I really could. But this Georgia situation, so to give you a little more feedback on what you just saw there, if you haven't already watched a longer clip, that black table that those black briefcases or suitcases or whatever came out from under was put there early in the morning by the lady, as you heard reference, the lady with the braids. She brought the table in, and they, if it was in the clip, I didn't see it, but they're testifying to this in court. So if it's a lie, you're going to get perjury. Okay, so it would be awful stupid of them to come in there and completely say this didn't happen. So, but what they're claiming, lady with the braids brought the table in, and these briefcases were underneath the table. Okay, so what is undisputed about this is that at around 10 something, lady comes into the room and tells everyone that's counting ballots, you got to go. We're done counting ballots for the night. Go home, get some sleep. Count's done. Now, I believe at the time, if memory serves me correct, and I could be wrong, so I'm not going to swear to this, I believe at the time this was the situation where we were hearing that a pipe had busted in the building, and so they had to get everyone out, and that's why they stopped counting ballots. Maybe that was a different scenario, but I'm thinking that's the reason. Okay? So, that being said, they get everyone out. And apparently the last ones who left before the remaining women were the Republican observers and the press. When they finally left, and the people in the room were acting like they're just finishing up, they're wiping down tables, they're getting ready to go home. So they leave. Just after 11 o'clock when they leave, those ladies and someone in red shows up, and they start pulling these briefcases out from under a table. They then take these briefcases that have ballots in them over to the ballot counting machines and start running them through the machines. Now, how many machines? I'm not sure, but I believe I heard in the clip they had about 3. Okay? So 3 machines. They're claiming that the count capability per machine is about 3,000 ballots per hour. They were in there for about 2 hours before anyone came back. I guess somehow the Republican observers had heard counting was still going on from the central station, whatever. This is what they're testifying to in court, because I watched a little bit of a longer clip on this, okay? So they heard there was more counting still taking place, so they went back. When they went back, turns out they had just left, okay? Apparently they packed up and went home at about 1 a.m. So doing the math there, 3,000 ballots an hour for 2 hours on just, say, 3 machines was about 18,000 votes that got ran through those machines. The argument is that apparently Georgia law, it was supposed to be watched. Some people were supposed to be present to observe. Blah, 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 blah. Whether this thing's going to stand, whether it's going to hold water, whether it's going to hold up in court, I don't know. Here's what I'm going to say. Even if it does have 100% absolute merit to it, do I expect, once again, that anything is going to be done? No, I don't. Namely because here's what a lot of people that are Trump supporters are going to have to learn about the Republican Party. They probably like Joe Biden more than they like Trump. And it's really not even a probably at this point. I'm going to be doing a video talking about Joe Biden's cabinet appointees, but just to give you some quick examples, Mitch McConnell speaking out against Trump and his drawbacks on the troops in Afghanistan, even though, again, as I said the other day, Donald Trump didn't do what he should have done in troop. He should have just took us out. That's what he said he would do. And he's tiptoed and beat around the bush, but he hasn't really done it. Okay? So, even the Senate Majority Leader, the guy who he's trying to fight for right now in Georgia, so he keeps his position, so the Republicans keep their majority in the Senate, they don't like Trump. If you recall, when Trump ran, they were so vocal on how terrible he was. That was one reason that I voted for Trump in 2016, because I don't like the Republican Party, and I wanted someone who could come in there and turn them and the Democrats up on their head. And I was hoping Trump would be the guy, and arguably he has turned the Republican Party up on its head in a way, but he didn't do the damage to the Democrat Party I was hoping he could do, because I'm a true independent. I'm not like some people who claim they're an independent at heart and then turn around and go vote for the Republicans again. I'm an independent, okay? And arguably, knowing what I know now, I would have voted third party last time around, but I didn't. I thought he might be an independent wolf in sheep's clothing, go inside and take things over. Clearly, we found out, whether it be Democrat or Republican, that strategy isn't having much success. It didn't work for Bernie, it didn't work for Tulsi, didn't work for Andrew Yang, and seems to not have worked very well for Donald Trump. Sure, like I said, turned the Republican Party up on its head, but now that this is taking place, this is why Republicans aren't going to do anything, in my opinion, to stop Joe Biden from taking office. Joe Biden has already made it clear he's going to be very pro-DOD military-industrial complex. Why? Look at who he's appointing to his cabinet. And Republicans love a good war. That's the thing that all the people who've bought the Trump stuff about Joe Biden being far left, far radical, we're going to be socialist, we're going to be communist. You need to understand something. That's why I say Trump wasn't running the best campaign. He was talking out of his backside when he said that stuff about Joe Biden. This isn't a defense of Joe Biden by any means. I don't like Joe Biden. It would be a cold day in hell before I'd ever vote for Joe Biden. But here's the truth about Joe Biden. He's good buddies with Republicans. Who did he talk about being some of his friends? Dick frickin' Cheney. He's friends with Dick Cheney. Do you remember what Dick Cheney and George Bush got us into? That's how tight he is with Republicans. You remember what Bernie hit him with in the debates about how he stood on the floor of the Senate wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid? Do you remember all that? Cut the entitlements, playing the Republican game. Do you remember how he bragged about working with the racists back in the day, working across the aisle? He knows how to negotiate. He loves working with Republicans. And I got news for you. If he's cutting deals with Republicans, he's not pushing a far left agenda, because anything he's got that involves anything that's left-wing policy, he's going to water it down, tone it down, tame it down, and stomp it out, basically, to cut a deal with a Republican. How do you think Obamacare became Obamacare? Because Obama did the same crap. That's how you had a guy, and again, I'm not defending Obamacare, hated Obamacare, but it was a Republican-style plan. It was based off Mitt Romney and Richard Nixon's old policies for health care. And that's a Democrat. And they wanted it passed. And they based it off of a Republican plan because they want to work with Republicans. Whereas Trump, if Republicans don't do what he wants, he'll get mouthy. He'll call them out. He'll call them names. Trump's got too big of a mouth. And here's the deal. He's governed just like the swamp almost has wanted him to do. With the exception of not starting new war, he's been a true Republican. But now the chickens are coming home to roost. He needs their help to save his ass from a potentially rigged election, and it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. They don't like him enough. I'll finish off with this. Referencing back to what I said in my last video. For the people who say that we're without a country, and they're trying so hard to defend Donald Trump, but they're saying it's about election integrity, that if we don't stop this, we have no country. So we've got to save Donald Trump's orange ass so he doesn't leave the White House. We've got to make sure he stays in office. Well, here's the deal. I'll say this again. It's irony to me. If what we saw in this video is a representation, and again, I have my suspicions because it's almost like the perfect cover-up. They used Red Mirage, told you what should be happening, and then found just enough. And used, well, look, it's mail-in ballots, and they were skewed for Joe Biden. Hey, they're skewed for Biden. What did you expect to happen? But seeing this, it almost makes what I was suspicious of like they just kept finding these ballots to catch Joe Biden up no matter how big the margin was. That was a suspicion I've had this entire time. If that's in fact the case, and not just in Georgia, because remember, even if they can win Georgia, let's say they get everything they want out of Georgia, not enough to get Trump to 270. He still has to have Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, or mix and match by throwing Nevada and Arizona in the mix too. He has to have like a combination of, I think, 3 more states, not counting Georgia. So he needs 4 total, right? I don't see that happening. I really don't. Hey, if it happens and I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll tell you this. If it happens, get prepared, because it's going to get ugly out there. Because the mainstream media has been doing overtime, again, pushing propaganda to tell you there's no rigging, there's no fraud, blah, 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 blah. They've been doing overtime to get that message out there. So for all the people who listen to them, for courts to then overturn it, or it somehow go back to Trump, that's going to get ugly. That's going to get ugly, because they're going to be insistent that they're going to say the same thing the right wing is saying right now. That's adamant that this needs to be overturned and given back to Trump. They're going to say the same thing they're saying. I heard a guy say it to me last night. He had no idea who I was. He had no idea I was an independent, but he had actually heard on talk radio about this video. And he told me, he's like, man, I'll tell you what. If them Democrats win the Senate in Georgia and they don't do nothing about this election fraud, we might as well be a banana republic. That's what they're going to say if it gets overturned, thanks to the way the freaking news has covered this issue. So again, if this happened all over the place, humor Donald Trump. Again, I don't think it will be overturned, because the Republicans don't like Donald Trump enough to try to save him from a rigged election. Hell, it wouldn't surprise me if Republicans had a hand in it. It wouldn't. If I found out that swamp Republicans were helping swamp Democrats rig an election to get a completely status quo candidate to be elected again, I would not be a bit surprised at that at all. And for the people who are so flabbergasted at it, like certain YouTubers who say we're not going to have a country anymore, I'll reference back to what I said the other day. Donald Trump himself knew about how the Democrats rigged the primary in 2016. They were trying to hit him with Russia. What did he do to get his DOJ to prosecute election interference? How hard did he put his foot on the gas other than making a few comments on the campaign trail? What did he really do to try to get someone prosecuted for rigging an election primary? And there's clear evidence that it happened. You know, thanks to people like Julian Assange, who he won't even pardon, by the way. On the campaign trail, he's out there talking up and down about how great WikiLeaks is because it exposed dirt on the Clintons. He talked about it up and down. Donald Trump owes his entire win in part to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And he won't even pardon the guy. Why? Because Republicans, at the core, the Republican Party, not voters, but the politicians and the status quo, they don't want Assange to be pardoned. So he's been trying to please this corporate GOP ass, this big elephant ass, for the last 4 years. And they're not going to have his back now that this has happened to him. And it's irony that this is happening to him because while he could have been doing the right thing this entire time and making sure that truth tellers like Snowden and Assange got an actual pardon, who've been showing you what kind of corruption your government will partake in, while a lot of you who are so pissed now didn't get a fire under your butt back then. And that goes for Donald Trump too, because he got appointed to the highest office in the land. He could have done some things, if nothing else, pardon those guys. He could have pardoned Chelsea Manning for showing that we're war criminals. He could have pardoned Edward Snowden for showing that our own government will use dirty means to spy on us and violate our Fourth Amendment. He could have pardoned Julian Assange for exposing that the Democrat Party rigged a primary and an election primary. He could have done all those things, done what was right, and gotten this message out there about, yeah, we need to take our country back and these people need to be prosecuted. Look what they're doing. He could have done all kind of things. He could not have appointed war hawks to his cabinet, appointed people in there who would have done the policy he ran on, got us out of the Middle East, got us out of the wars, but he didn't do that. He appointed swamp creatures. He bathed in swamp water. He tried to rub elbows with corrupt ass clowns, and now he expects those same people to bail him out. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And if it happens, I'll be thoroughly surprised. Because again, I say they like Biden more than they like Trump. Biden is exactly what they are. Corporate sellout. That's not to say Trump isn't at the end of the day, but his mouth is dangerous to their end game. So they want him gone. They do. They want him gone, and they'll have him gone. Period. Now that he's even talking about drawing back troops from Afghanistan, that's getting backlash from Democrats and Republicans alike. Some Republicans are speaking their mind and agreeing with the president and doing the right thing there, but not the Senate Majority Leader. Not the good old top Republican in the Senate, good old Mitch McConnell, the man you're fighting to save right now. He ain't agreeing with you. And that's because the status quo GOP won't agree with you on this. They're not going to. It's not going to happen. They're going to sell you out. And again, I'll say this. To me, it's utter irony that if all this fraud is true, all this rigging did happen, Trump's going to be victim of it because he had an opportunity to do something about these corrupt figures that have been trying to take our country away from we the people. and he sat on his hands and tried to please those fuckers instead. So if he becomes victim to their corrupt games, to me, that's just irony. That's absolute irony, and it should be a message to all the people who are so irate. Next time you want to put someone on a pedestal, next time you want to elect a man who you feel is becoming a martyr now, you might want to think about, did he actually do anything within his power to really try and drain the swamp when you lay all this kind of evidence out there? All the evidence he's had laid out in front of him, and he did nothing but try to please the swamp and add more swamp creatures to it. I call that karma. I call that karma. Rigged election or no rigged election, to me. And look, I'll leave it on this. I'm not praising Joe Biden's win. I said we were in trouble either way. That's why I called it a brown wave for 2020. And that's why I was principled enough to not go vote for a big mound of the crap floating in that brown wave. Like some people. I'm not going to do that. Because to me, you're participating in helping the problem. Even though third parties didn't do very well this election cycle, I don't care. I sleep better at night knowing I didn't vote for part of this country's problem. And I'll sleep like a baby. The only thing that's going to stop me from sleeping like a baby is if our country keeps going down the wrong path and we end up in real bad times. And arguably, that's a high possibility at this point, the way things are going. But to me, if Trump was a victim of this, considering he did nothing to do the right thing to help the people who've been exposing the government would do things like this, and now he's a victim of their own acts, that's just irony to me. That complete irony.